I wasn't the biggest fan of season 1 of Prime Video's Reacher, but I went into season 2 with an open mind and I was hopeful that the shortcomings in the first season weren't repeated. I've now seen all of season 2, so how does it fare? The members of Reacher's former US Army unit are being mysteriously and brutally murdered one by one. Pulled from his drifter lifestyle, Reacher reunites with three of his former teammates to investigate. Together, they begin to connect the dots in a mystery where the stakes get higher at every turn and bring about questions of who has betrayed them and who will die next. Alan Ritchson reprises his role as Reacher, and right off the bat, I really enjoyed this season. Ritchson is still stoic and bluntly direct, sometimes leaning the character into a not too bright direction, but the cleverness of the character combined with all of the background development that we get on him made for an engaging watch and a character that was endearing to watch. Now, the whole premise of this season is that the members of Reacher's unit, the 110th Special Investigators, are being systematically picked off in horrendous ways, so Reacher and a few of the remaining members work to figure out why this is happening and then who's behind it. The who part of the mystery is shown to us rather quickly, so there's not much intrigue with that arc, other than the fact that we're not given motive or what the final outcome is. Plus, there are layered complications that create conflict and doubt for Reacher and his team, which later on begin to have emotional heft to the storyline. Now, this is thanks to several flashbacks that we get as Reacher forms his unit and they begin to solve cases and make arrests for the Army. Now, these aren't long, drawn out flashbacks, but they're lengthy enough to give context to situations as well as provide details on members of the unit, including Reacher. Now, I felt that we're given a great sense of who he is and how he functions, as well as his philosophies. And all of these deepen the character, taking him from a grunting and punching behemoth to one that still does those things, but also has an incredible loyalty and protective mindset for those that he relies on. Now, I also really enjoyed getting to see the members of the unit and how each of their personalities fit together and complemented the others. We don't get a ton of background on every single member of the team, but we're shown enough on all of them to know them. And then the ones that we need to become more invested in are given more screen time with their histories. Now, this season created several moments where the characters encounter peril. And because I was invested in them, these sequences were tense. Now, some moments foreshadow future scenarios, and I was on edge because I had grown attached to certain characters and their dynamics. Even those that were abrasive at the start, they grew on me, and when they faced danger, I was concerned for their outcome. And then any character deaths, they didn't seem out of the realm of possibility, considering how the season opens and then the premise of the plot. So if some of the team have already been knocked off, why can't more be eliminated? The only one I ever felt somewhat sure they'd survive was Reacher, and that's simply because I know there are several books featuring him, and I don't think Prime is ready to kill off their franchise just yet. And with the supporting cast that make up Reacher's team, there are three plus a detective that form an entertaining group. Neely, who we met in the first season, returns, and I love the small quirks that she has, one of which is just not shaking hands or touching others, and this creates a very poignant moment in the story, and I appreciated that. There are also two members of the unit we've never met before, Dixon and O'Donnell, and they each bring a different and fun dynamic to the team, one creating tension, the other relieving it. And I love the toughness of the team also. Well, their wounds would probably send them all to the hospital multiple times with just all kinds of internal damage. They're scrappy fighters that create exciting action sequences. And the final addition to Reacher's squad is the unlikely addition of a detective, whose case Reacher, he just keeps screwing up because he's going rogue. Russo is so antagonistic towards Reacher, and it is a blast to watch as they trade verbal barbs. They've each got also this ton of machismo on display, threatening each other with violence just so often that I was really hoping that we were going to get a bare-knuckled grudge match at some point. And Russo delivers a lot of passion, making some of his scenes gut-wrenching. Now, if you're looking for action and brutality, there is quite a bit on display. The hand-to-hand fights are typically the gnarliest, with just some nasty appendage breaks, followed by tremendous body blows. Now, the fight choreography is handled well, and usually we can see most of what's going on in the melee. There are times when the editing cuts quickly, but in these sequences, the footage is typically jumping between the characters as they're all simultaneously taking on multiple opponents. And then there are the gunfights. I mean, tons of bullets fly. Sometimes it seems like they have unlimited ammo. But in the latter half of the show, guns do run out, adding just a sense of small believability to it rather than the absurd, never-ending magazine. And there's a sequence at one point when Reacher is handcuffed and he still manages to go ham on his captors. I mean, it's a devastatingly brutal scene, but it's so much fun to watch, especially as the camera flies around the area to highlight many of the different angles of the fight. And there's about one good action scene in each episode, some with more, but it could leave you wanting a bit if you're expecting multiple large scale fights per episode. Now, something I wasn't as thrilled with is that this season is pretty heavy on the character exposition. The script at times becomes dumb and then over explains every single detail of something, not having the confidence in the audience to understand and work things out by themselves. And we're not talking in depth or complicated explanations either. Run of the mill interactions where characters go into monologues that don't resemble believable conversations. There are also a couple of times that we get villain or antagonist dialogue that, once again, don't need to go into the detail that they do. It's like we've got Gargamel spelling out all his dastardly plans to the Smurfs when it's pretty clear what's going on. Like, there's at one point where a villain brings out an item, and while the context it's perfectly clear thanks to dialogue in a previous episode, the bad person still has to deliver their lecture, which then felt insulting. Now, several of the plot twists in this season I think are predictable, but there are a couple of times when the mystery does a good job of staying obscured. Plus, there's this urgency that's built into the storyline as the unit works different angles to chase down those who killed their team members, while at the same time also thwarting some villains' plans and bringing them to the unit's special kind of justice. Now, most of the episodes are 45 to 50-ish minutes long, but the final episode, strangely, only 40. And it's still a great episode that packs in a ton of action and provides resolution, but I was surprised that it didn't feel rushed. I think that's because the previous 7 episodes build out the story in a cohesive way that balances the drama, mystery, and the action, for the most part. Now, there are a couple of cliffhangers for some episodes, but I think the story content alone is enough to keep coming back week after week. As usual, I do wish that this was all dropping at once so we can get our binge on, but the weekly releases are going to give you something to look forward to well into January of 2024. So overall, Reacher Season 2 greatly improves on the character development and investment of the central character and the supporting cast. The story has a decent mystery, and even though some of it is predictable, some elements remain hidden to create intrigue and momentum. Ritchson is still stoic and a little robotic in his delivery, but because we're given so much background on his character and those around him, it's easier to overlook the bland facade in favor of seeing the integrity of the character. Unfortunately, the series still falls into its own trap of over-explaining plot points and dumbing down dialogue, which becomes insulting and annoying. But thankfully, it isn't the norm for the entire script, using wit and cleverness to reduce the detriment of the abundant exposition. The action is exciting and brutal, delivering death blows to any characters dumb enough to challenge Reacher. For me, this is a massive improvement over Season 1. I had a blast with the characters, laughing and wincing at times because of the harshness of some of the actions. There's a little sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give Season 2 of Reacher 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what other book series would you like to see turned into a television series? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.